Hello, it's JK from Games Nosh, and today I'm going to be bringing you a interview with Shane Mesa and Dani Person, who are the composers of the upcoming game Mother 4. First off though, I have to apologise for a bit of sound interference at the beginning of the interview due to a rogue air conditioner. Managed to get it sorted out after the first little bit though, so bear with us on that one. So without further ado, here's the interview. Hi guys.
Hi.
So, how did you both come to work on Mother 4? And how far into the development was the game when you both started creating the music?
Actually, Dani can tell you that because he's the one who found the project, I think.
Yeah. I was actually just looking for some projects to work on through, Starman.net, and I came across two projects that were going and saying that they were going to be the Mother 4 project, and I just kind of flipped a coin and went with one, and then I wanted Shane to be a part of it too. I was like, hey Shane, you write faster than me, so go ahead and write this song and audition for the, composer, audio director slot over there. And of course Shane went ahead and threw it all down in one night and pitched it over to Chase, and then from there it was at the very early stages of the project. I think it was still being made in, RPG Maker? Game Maker or RPG Maker?
Actually, I think it was RPG Maker. Yeah.
And the sprites were very not what they are now. It was nowhere close to what it is now in terms of development. And nor were we nearly as good as composers as we are now. Not to say that we're the best or anything like that, but we've certainly grown since, I think, 2009, whenever Shane first pitched the first tunes over to Chase.
Yeah, our musicianhood childhood started with Mother 4, and I guess we just kind of grew with the game. It's a good and bad thing because we've been with this project for so long, and look, we're still working on it in our mid-20s.
You guys knew each other then before starting on this project?
Oh yeah. Dani and I were best friends since we were little kids.
I think it was 13 or 14. We've been best friends.
Yeah. No, really. We met in sophomore year of high school, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We were in the high school band, and he was playing the saxophone with some etudes and scales on a just by himself, because he was very
I was a lone wolf.
He was a lone wolf. And for some reason I walked up to him and started trying to play with him on my trumpet, and it's like we didn't think it was awkward, but looking back at it, it's kind of an awkward way to meet.
Yeah.
Just minding your own business, playing these scales from a book, and then I walk up with my trumpet and play with you. I think that's pretty much it. And then we've been best friends ever since.
Yeah, I think before that I kind of thought Shane was an idiot.
Oh yeah, and I hated Donnie's smile. He had this smile where he bobbed his head like. I just despised him. I don't know.
Yeah, so you guys are wind and brass musicians then, primarily?
Back in the day, yeah.
Yeah.
I am actually a high school band director, so I still play my horn quite a bit, and I am primarily wind, yes.
Great stuff. So moving on to the next big question, what elements of the Mother series soundtracks did you guys bring to the new game? And were there any elements you found lacking that you feel you've improved on in the new soundtrack for Mother 4?
Well, definitely in the beginning, we were lacking stylistic choices because we started off with Reason. Well, we still use Reason to make the music, but we didn't have near the amount of sound design experience that we have now, and so we used a lot of default voices from the Reason libraries, and with very minimal, modulations or changes within the sound. So back then, that's why we have so much. We actually have a lot of unused music, and it's just in its own little database right now, and it's feels like a big waste of time that we're not going to be using the music in the project. But really, I mean, it was a learning experience, and I don't think we really mind. Do you mind, Dani?
No, not at all. I think this was something that who was the guy that made Fez? Was it Phil Fish? He was talking about how whenever he first started on the project, he wasn't as good at spriting and artwork as he was later on. And then whenever the project was a little bit closer to release, he started just redoing everything. And that's kind of what we were doing, the same thing as well. At the very beginning, I could say that I aired a lot more towards an Earthbound Mother 2 type of composition style, but it was too obvious of it was like I was copying it. And then now I'm kind of finding my own voice, and I think I can better strike the balance between hitting the style that is Mother 3 and Mother 2 or Mother 1's soundtrack and the soundscapes that they create, and then also adding my own artistic nuances or choices to the series. So I feel that has been my own passage since the very beginning of the project. I'm just redefining what I'm supposed to be doing as a composer for this project.
And for me, it's really, back then, I guess I tried too hard. And the thing about Mother music in general, if you look, it sounds like they didn't really try, but it turned out beautiful. Because it's very, very simple and a lot of weird things going on. It could have been just beautiful accidents, things that they found and just kind of messed around and put it in the song, and it just, everything sounds like it's on purpose. And, it may or may not be. You never know with music, but it's very minimalistic, and I didn't really realize that before. So I definitely tried to put a little bit too much into the music, and it didn't turn out as good. And now that I've backed off and stopped caring as much, it's actually turning out better. So I've learned not to care so much about my own music in order to make it work out.
It's interesting what you said, Shane, about the unused tracks, because I think Mother 1 and 2 both had like hundreds of unused tracks. I think especially Mother 2 had over 100.
Really?
So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, me neither.
Well, then, there you go.
Okay, moving on to the next question. Has your work on Mother 4 been a collaborative process, both with each other and with the game developers? And if so, can you give an example of this?
I have one example, but how do you feel about it, Dani? About our collaborative nature?
Between me and Shane, it's really just us pitching the sound to whichever tunes we've written, just pitching them to each other and saying, yeah, I like this part, or, this part could be better, or I don't think it quite hits the mark. I feel Shane has a better ear for, like, if I go ahead and miss something or if something distracting, he has a better ear for going ahead and articulating that. And then whenever Shane sends stuff to me, it's almost like Shane sends final drafts all the time, whereas I like to send, like, very incomplete forms of a tune before I go ahead and commit all the way to it. There have been a couple times where Shane and I have actually collaborated on single tunes. I think one of them was a battle tune where Shane hit a brick wall basically, and he passed it on to me to go ahead and add on another portion of it that was that tried to hit what the creative director was trying to articulate. And so that's one of the occasions where we actually collaborated on a single tune and poured both of our artistic material into a single tune. But for the most part, it's critique and just saying this is a good technique to use for this type of music and so on and so forth. With regard to working with the creative team, we get a lot of our directives from the creative director, who goes ahead and listens to it and adds or subtracts things that he likes or dislikes from the sound, to which we can go ahead and defend it or not defend it. And a lot of times it's, okay, let's go ahead and listen to the track and let it cook for a second, and then I'll listen to it again to see if it really is distracting or if I'm in just a really weird mood. And it's a really delicate process there because, of course, if you're stuck in a battle for a good, 10 minutes or however long, it becomes very dangerous for the composer because if it becomes tiresome to the ear, no one wants to play the game. And there are several examples of that throughout gaming history where the music is just too much, it's too distracting, or it's not varied enough to hold your attention. And so that's why we kind of give a little bit of air whenever we try and compose these tracks.
So does the creative director, do they use Reason as well? Do you send them the Reason project, or do they kind of just give you pointers on what they think should be removed or added?
Okay, sorry, I cut you off there. Mickey is actually, he's not a musician. They don't use, we handle all the sources. But it was tough in the beginning. We've gotten into a better relationship now, a better pipeline, I should say, bouncing things back and forth. But at first, Mickey didn't know how to articulate what he wanted, just said if it was bad or not. And, it might have not necessarily been bad music, it just wasn't what he wanted. And so it took a while, it took a long time for me, I don't know about Dani, but for me, because I've worked with him pretty closely for a while, is to figure out,
what he's saying.
What?
Just what he's saying. Sometimes he'll be like, yeah, that bloopy thing in the background, I need more of that. It's like, what bloopy thing?
It's interesting, though, because I kind of look at Mick as a person, like, he's, I respect his opinions of the music because he kind of fits the bill of, non-musicians, how they hear music. And since Dani and I can't hear music the way that non-musicians hear it, Mick is very valuable in that regard. So it's been really interesting to hear how he reacts to music, and he doesn't know why something doesn't fit, but he's right about it, and there's always a better way to make it happen, and to help it lay better on non-musicians' ears. So because like I said, we're much more simplistic now, and that's what he's always wanted too. So in the long run, we've become, or at least me, I've become a more simple composer, but I guess it's actually the product is better because it's more simple and people can understand it more. So it definitely doesn't cater to, your hardcore, PhD musicians out there. They might, I don't know, but they might find my music boring. But, with this game, because there's so many people and it definitely has to fit a particular style and uniqueness.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So alongside the music, the Mother series has also had a very unique approach to sound design. Can we also expect the same with Mother 4? Are you guys handling the sound design as well?
That's really mostly Shane's department. He could give you that.
Yeah, for the sound. Yeah, sound design. Sound design there's sound design in the music too, but then sound design for the sound effects. Yeah, pretty much it's all from scratch. There's a lot of work there. That's a whole. It's unusual for composers, like a full blown, like someone who actually specializes in making music for games, to be working in the sound design department. And so I guess I guess I've been fortunate to be able to have to force myself to get experience in that. Hopefully that'll make me a more valuable asset in the going forward, and getting work. But yeah, it's all the sound design, all the sound effects and everything, ambience. It's all, some of it might be field recordings that are, that are modified to sound more low quality, and things taken out, and then, but yeah.
And I just wanted to add on to that. Shane was mentioning aiming for something to be low quality. It's an interesting thing. We're kind of riding back into the 90s, whenever you could only digitally create motorcycle sputter or anything like that. So if you use a real motorcycle sputter, it's way too realistic for the type of game that we're writing. So Shane does a fantastic job of creating things that would have been great for sound design back in the 90s and early 2000s. I just wanted to, pay him respect.
Gee, thanks. Yeah, it's kind of a nightmare to make things like that, to be honest, because you have to think about, well, what would a sound do? Because it's with sound design, especially with specific ambience like that, not like bloops and bleeps and stuff like that. You can pretty much do whatever you want. Like, oh, I have to make a motorcycle sound, and I can't go just record a motorcycle. You have to make it. And so you're thinking about, like, well, what instruments, or like what kind of like what, if it's a sine wave, what kind of sine wave, what, like which frequency should I start at, and like how much, where can I cut it up, and what should I add to it, and like what kind of layering can I do in order to produce like this specific sound. And there's a little bit of brainstorming and experimenting too, but really you kind of have to know what you're looking for, because if you're just if you just sit there and experiment, it's gonna take forever to find out how to make that sound. And the motorcycle sound was actually the first ambience, like true ambience that had to be emulated, and it was a little tough to get to actually make, but it turned out good.
So you say you've done some field recordings. Have you done any actual recordings with the music, or have you mainly used the sound banks through Reason and things like that?
Actually, sometimes there is one. I gotta dance around it, but I think there's one song so far that I've used a personal sample of my voice, but you can't really. It just sounds like it's modified so much to where it just sounds like it's its own. Like you can't really tell it's my voice, but it helps. Like sometimes that comes in really handy to make your own samples in the music, because you can do a lot. You'd be surprised about how much you can really do to a sound file, to a sample. You can for example, I could record a sound of me, dropping an amiibo like that on my keyboard, and then make that into a nuclear explosion or something.
A great example of a person who does that really well is Beardy Man. He can make a kick out of his voice, manipulate it, and just sounds fantastic. So if you haven't looked that up, Beardy Man's great.
Yeah, there you go. Actually, I was inspired before I really started sound designing for Mother 4, because it was kind of a daunting thing. I saw this movie. It's not for the kids, but I saw this movie called Antichrist, and
one of my least favorite movies.
Really, one of your least favorite? Okay, yeah. It was interesting. It was a very, very interesting movie. But I saw behind the scenes the sound designer, or really the one who did the soundtrack. But it was the whole soundtrack was pretty much sound design. He showed us how he did the sound design, and it was little things like rubbing two blades of grass together to make an entire soundscape. And that was just, that's really what inspired me, like the power of sound design, of taking something so simple and making it into something completely unexpected.
Yeah, I think I read about this. Did he also put like really low frequencies, like drones, throughout the entire film, or am I thinking of another film? Yeah,
he did. Yeah, he did do that, and he did a lot of. He even he recorded a woman's voice singing one note, and made that into like a soaring ambience. You couldn't even tell that it was a voice anymore, but it worked so well. He's a brilliant sound designer.
Maybe I should revisit the film then.
Yeah, there you go. If you want to get into sound design, I definitely recommend looking at that guy because and I forget his name, but he's definitely he knows what he's doing.
Okay, so we have two more questions. Less about Mother 4, more about you guys as composers. If you had to choose, which one of these musical elements do you find most important to your work? Harmony, melody, rhythm, or texture?
Melody.
Yeah?
Yeah, melody. Yeah.
And
melody.
Could you guys explain why?
You could say that back in the day, people had to rely on melody because of the limitations, so they needed the music to stand out with melody. There wasn't a lot of textures to be had, but in the SNES days, they had 16-bit, so there were textures to be had, but they still had, most games tried to have a strong melody because, it was that transition from 8-bit, and they relied so heavily on that melody. I still agree with it today, that a melody is really important because today, I think in the industry, melody, most of the times in AAA titles, seems to be unnecessary. Yet, whenever you do find a great melody in a game, like some AAA titles, like maybe Batman, or in all of Nintendo's titles, that music really stands out still, and you remember that music, and but it's not as common as it was back in the day. People, because there's so many sounds to be. You can have so much fun with sounds. It's now anybody can get access to anything. And people can pirate samples and plugins and software and go nuts and get lost in sound. But we forget about the melody. So I think I'm probably going off on a tangent, thinking about the industry as a whole and video game development. But with Mother 4. I think everybody can agree that melody is really important, but Mother games can also get really weird. So I guess second from that, a close second would definitely be texture, like what you're doing with the sounds and how it lays in the mix.
If you had the chance, which game or game series would you like to have composed for? Maybe.
Super Mario Galaxy.
Okay.
Oh man,
Super Mario Galaxy. All right, no, Dani.
God, oh God. I really would have liked to do Zelda stuff. That, or I kind of grew up on Japanese RPGs, so I would really like a Japanese RPG as well, along the lines of Final Fantasy series or something like that. But he brings up Super Mario Galaxy. That would have been the bee's knees, man. I don't know. Catch me on a different day. I'll say something else.
Yeah, and JRPGs as well. Famous for the melodies in those games.
Oh, those Japanese composers love them some French music, man.
Yeah, Nobuo and what's the other guy that Iwadare, Noriyuki Iwadare. He made the Grandia music. Grandia, it's underdog, but that music was on par with Nobuo's works, in my opinion.
That's interesting. I'll have to check that out then. Yeah, Nobuo Uematsu is the reason I got into music in general, really. So yeah.
I think he's the reason why a lot of us got into it.
Yeah, he is. I think is I don't know if it's Koji or him. He's one of the John Williams of video games.
Oh man, I think it was Koji.
Yeah.
Was it Koji Kondo?
I've heard it said about both of them, I think.
Mhm.
I think it's on both of their Wikipedia pages, if I'm not mistaken. The same phrase. So, any reason for picking Super Mario Galaxy?
Oh, that I don't know why the soundtrack is. I'm just a sucker for just quirky, just Nintendo music. I don't know anything that Koji Kondo makes, because he's, that's my guy right there. Just really captures a child's heart, and not just children, but it captures the child in you, and I don't know. It makes you remember. It obviously always plays on nostalgia, but I think even more than that, even if you're not familiar with the music that he makes, I think it really does bring out something else. It's very different, and very versatile too. Because he made the Zelda soundtracks. So, and Star Fox too, right? But there's always that you can always hear Koji in there, and Super Mario Galaxy just has, I don't know, it's orchestra. I always wanted to make orchestral music, live orchestra, and they're but very strongly melodically driven orchestra, like a very tight, clean orchestra, and there's just something about the soundtrack, and it also reminds me of John Williams, because I love John Williams, and it's just like the best of everything. I think like the best of like film, of John Williams, and that kind of film music, and that energy, and complexity too. But it also, with the melody, it really dumbs it down and gives you that simplicity that Koji Kondo gives you, and is everything's so well put together. It's not too much, it's not too little, and the melodies are really strong. They're definitely moving, and the fact that this is all Mario games, but Super Mario Galaxy, of course, was the first one that I heard where they went full out, like an orchestra, and with a different kind of style. It matched the theme of where you really, like, when you hear the music, you feel like this is exactly what this place would sound like, which is, when I was a kid, when I didn't really understand music, that's all I knew was that, like, wow, this music, sounds exactly like what this place would sound like, kind of a thing. Like, that was just my simple thoughts. And so that's what kind of composer I want to be, is to be able to make exactly what something would sound like, the environment or the situation. What would it sound like? And I hope to achieve, that right there.
So what are the plans at the moment as far as your work on Mother 4? Like, what have you finished the soundtrack? Or is it still ongoing? And then what are your plans after Mother 4 has finished?
We're still writing music. We're still editing stuff. I'm still going back to tunes and trying to find little problems with the pieces and fixing them. So that's still an ongoing project. After the Mother 4 project, of course, I'm looking for other work. I'm actually hoping to get hired for this other contract and actually get paid for once. But after that, trying to refine my craft so that it's not just, retro, quote unquote, retro music that I'm writing, but also if I need to write music that's more ostinato driven to fit more industry stuff, then go for it. But also to try and push boundaries where boundaries can be pushed in some indie games if people would allow it. That's at least my step, and I'm trying to build a portfolio to go to grad school for this, to see where that takes me, and that's kind of where I want to go.
that's something about Dani that you gotta respect. I mean, in the long run, I think this is like my opinion about Dani on the side of, as him as a composer, is he's not afraid to push the boundaries. Because he tries to push the boundaries with Mother 4, but a lot of times we can't let it happen because there's definitely a lot of boundaries that can't be pushed, and the music's got to serve its purpose. But Donnie actually tries to explore pushing the boundaries, while I'm just sitting back here selling out.
No, you sell yourself short, Shane. I guess the philosophy is whenever we're looking at music in general, this was all throughout the early 20th century, is that what's that next sound? I think video game music is getting to that point where people are starting to think, okay, what's the next step? What's the next progression for music to really engage its audience within a video game medium? I think whatever that next step is, hopefully propels video game music into an actual respected medium of music. People are starting to do that right now, but people will respect movie music, people will respect classical art music, they'll respect music in a foreign country, but video game music still is in that little kid box for whatever reason, even though there's great pieces of art out there. And so by pushing that boundary, I think we as musicians can bring about that next exodus of music, if you will. So,
very well said. Well, that's that. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you'd like to hear more from Shane and Dani, then you can check the websites shanemesa.com and daniperson.com. And of course, they've also got SoundClouds. Keep your eye on gamesnosh.com for more news on Mother 4, and I'll leave you with another song from the soundtrack.